श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। वागीशाद्याः सुमनसः सर्वार्थानामुपक्रमे यं नत्वा कृतकृत्यास्यस्तन्नमामि गजाननं। शारदाम्भोजवदना वदनाम्बुजे सर्वदा सर्वदास्माकं सन्निधिं क्रियात्। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। प्रमाणनखनिर्भिन्नमहामोहामरारये नमस्कुर्मो नृसिंहाय स्वप्रकाशचिदात्मने। भारतीकरुणापात्रं भारतीपदभूषणं भारतीपदमारूढं भारतीतीर्थमाश्रये। विद्याविनयसम्पन्नं वीतरागं विवेकिनं वन्दे वेदान्ततत्त्वज्ञं विधुशेखरभारतीम्। सन्तु श्रीगुरुशङ्करार्यचरणाः सन्तुष्टये नः श्रितस्वान्तध्वान्त नितान्तकृन्तनकलानिस्तन्द्रचन्द्रातपाः। दृप्यद्दुर्मतवादिमस्तकतटी विन्यस्तवमाङ्घ्रयः सद्यः संसृतिहारि हृद्य निरवद्याद्वैतविद्याञ्चिताः। उभयेषां श्रीचरणानां पादपाथोरुहोः प्रणिपत्य today we have assembled to speak of something that we have probably heard many times, that we have probably told many times, but yet need to know yet what it is in a bit more detail. The Sringeri Birudavali, the Guru Birudavali, is something that is very unique to our Guru Parampara. It is something that defines a lot of the things we do both in this temple and in any Sringeri center, whether in India or the US. Generally we tell this Birudavali while doing Guru Vandanam, before or after any activities that we do, as a mark of remembering the Gurus who have given us the parampara to do whatever astika karyas it is that we're doing, the Gurus who have given us the marga nirdesha, the Gurus who have shown us the path to our sadhana. So as in remembrance of those Gurus and in gratitude to those Gurus, it is tradition that we either begin or finish, or begin and finish any of the things we do with this Guru Vandana. So this Guru Vandana generally has three parts to it. We have the Slokas that we tell in the beginning to all the Acharyas. Then we tell a part from Upanishad. There are a few mantras that we tell from the Upanishad. And then in the end we tell the Birudavali. So the Birudavali literally means Biruda is a title. So actually in Sanskrit, the word Biruda referred to a Veera, a Yodha, a warrior, a great warrior that had renowned reclaim. So you will see in text, they will say Birudavali. So the king accompanied by his renowned warriors, he went somewhere. So actually the word Biruda meant that. But over time, the word Biruda or Birudam became a title. It became a synonym for the word title. So even today we see Panditas or great figures being given these titles, right? Like Sangeeta Vidwan or Sangeeta Kalanidhi, Darshanalankara, something like that. So these are all Birudas. Birudavali. An avali is a succession or a line or a group of something. So when we say Sringeri Guru Birudavali, it means the succession of titles that our acharyas hold. The thing is though, titles are usually given. These are not titles that were given, but these are more so descriptory titles. They are titles that describe the nature of our acharyas. These are titles that describe why we must look up to them, why we must honor them. So these are the three parts. So you have the shlokas, you have the mantras, and then you have the Birudavali. So if we start with the shlokas, we start generally with Shankarupena Machittam Pankikritam Abhudhyaya Kinkariyasya Samaya Shankaracharyamashraye. So if you look at Sringeri during the Vyasa Puja, so in the beginning of Chaturmasya, while Acharyas are doing puja, it is customary to do Parayana of Taittiriya, all three Vallis, and then Mahanarayana Upanishad. And along with Narayana Upanishad, after the last but one puja is over, you will tell the Guru Parampara Stotra. So starting from, the Parampara starts from Sadashiva, Shuddha Spatika Sankasham, Shuddha Vidyapradayakam. So starting from there, Shiva, Narayana, Brahma, Narayana Padmam, Vasishtha, then Shakti, Parashara. So all the Gurus are prayed to in a shloka each. And then by the time we get to Shankaracharya, this is the shloka that is told. And then what happens is we jump to from Bhagavad Pada to the Parapara Guru. And so currently the Acharya of the Peetham is Jagadguru Bharati Tirtha Mahaswami. His Guru being Abhinavidya Tirtha Mahaswami. Current Acharya's Paramaguru being Chandrasekhara Bharati Swami. Current Acharya's Parameshthi Guru being Chandrasekhara Sachidananda Shiva Abhinava Bharati Swami. So current Acharya's Parapara Guru. So one before the Parameshthi Guru being Vriddha Nrsimha Bharati Swami. So we start from there because otherwise we will have to tell 35 different shlokas. Right? So when we're trying to do a quick Guru Vandanam, we will start from the Parapara Guru. So then we go to Prahlada Varado Devaha. So the first shloka is done to Bhagavad Pada because it is from there that the parampara is shown in a very specific form for the Sringeri Mata because Bhagavad Pada is the one that started. So Shankarupena Machittam Pankikritama Bhudyaya Kinkariyasya Samaya Shankaracharya Mashraye. We will go quickly on the shlokas because I want to put the focus on the Birudavali. But this is just saying that so our minds have become polluted due to Maya. Right? It is, as I think we talked about this last time, the inability to discern between the Jagat and Ishvara, the inability to see the Jagat as Ishvara, or the inability to distinguish between Atma and Anatma. This inability, this Kalusha is caused by Maya. So that Maya becomes subservient to a Jnani. The Maya acts according to that Jnani's wishes, and Bhagavad Pada is such a Jnani. So therefore we say to that Bhagavad Pada, under whose control Maya operates, and that Maya is the cause of all the impurities of our mind. So to that Bhagavad Pada I do Namaskara. Then the next shloka, as we said, is to Vriddha Nrsimha Bharati Swami. Prahlada Varado Devaha Yo Nrisimha Paro Harihi Nrisimhopasakam Nityam Tam Nrisimha Gurum Bhaje. A very beautiful shloka because it embodies the essence of Advaita Bhakti. So it is saying, I do Namaskara to that Nrisimha Guru, to that Nrisimha Bharati Swami who is Nrisimha himself. So it is very well known that the Acharya was a prolific Upasaka of Nrsimha. It is said that he once went 22 hours straight doing Nrsimha Mantra Japa. So that is their caliber. But that Prahlada Varado Devaha, that Bhagavan, that was the protector of Prahlada, that Bhagavan that gave boons to Prahlada, that Narasimha, that Guru who is that Nrisimha and simultaneously is also Nrisimhopasaka, who also does Upasana of Nrisimha. Namaskaram to that Nrisimha Bharati Swami, Tam Nrisimha Gurum Bhaje. Then we come to Sachidananda Shiva Abhinava Nrisimha Bharati Swami. This is the Acharya who discerned that Kalati was Bhagavad Pada's Janmabhumi. This is the Acharya who established the Sadvidya Sanjeevani Pathashala in Sringeri. Same Acharya who started the Ganapati Vakyartha Sadas that we do in Bhadrapada in the Ganapati Navaratris. So a very great Acharya of the Parampara and an Acharya whose writings also are very vast. Probably the Acharya that wrote the most after Bhagavad Pada and who actually wrote more stotras than Bhagavad Pada as well, which are published as the book Bhakti Sudha Tarangini. So to that Acharya we do Namaskara saying, Shri Sachidananda Shivabhinavya Nrisimha Bharati Vidhanyatindran Vidyanidhin Mantranidhin Sadatmanishtan Bhaje Manava Shambhurupan. So the first two padas suffice to tell Acharya's Yoga Patta. Sachidananda Shivabhinavya Nrisimha Bharati Abhidhan. Sachidananda Shivabhinava Nrisimha Bharati. Namaskaram to that Guru. Vidyanidhin, the embodiment of Vidya. Mantranidhin, the repository of all mantras. Sadatmanishtan, to that Acharya who is ever established in experiencing his Atma Tattva. Manava Shambhurupan, to that Acharya who is basically Shiva in a human form. Namaskaram to that Acharya. Then we come to Abhinavidya Tirtha, Chandrasekhara Bharati Swami. Sadatmadhyana Naratam, ṛṣyēbhyah parāṅmukham, Naumi Shastreshu Nishnatam, Chandrasekhara Bharatim. So Namaskaram to Chandrasekhara Bharati who is Sada Atmadhyana Naratam, who is always focused on doing dhyana of the Atma Tattva. Vishayebhyah Parāṅmukham, who is turned away from experiencing the world. So most of us, our transactions happen with the world in an outgoing way. We seek the world outside us. But Acharya, being the form of Vairagya that he is, Vishayebhyah Parāṅmukham, he is turned away. His focus is not on the Vishayas. And Naumi Shastreshu Nishnatam, and it is not like just because he has Vairagya, he has given up study. Shastreshu Nishnatam, the word Nishnata or Nadishna are all words that refer to someone that has seen the end of something, that has found mastery in something. So Namaskaram to that Chandrasekhara Bharati Swami who has attained mastery over all the Shastras. Then we come to Abhinavidya Tirtha Swami, Vivekinam, Mahaprajnam, Dhairya Audarya Kshamanidhim, sada abhinava purvam tam vidyatirtha gurum bhaje. So this is actually one of the things we see in the Pitha, wherein when an Acharya is given the same Yoga Patta, the same title as a Purvacharya, they will usually add the word Abhinava in front of it. Which is why there was a Satchidananda Bharati Swami, there was a Nrisimha Bharati Swami. But when the succeeding Acharya also has the same Yoga Patta, we put Satchidananda Shiva Abhinava Nrisimha Bharati Swami. So that Acharya is there. So in the same way, the Vidyatirtha Swami, who will come in the Birudavali, vyākhyānasiṃhāsanādhīśvara, that refers to Vidyatirtha, who is the 10th Acharya of the Pitha. It is his sannidhi that we see as the Vidyāśaṅkara Mandira today in Sringeri. So that was the 10th Acharya. This Acharya is also named Vidyatirtha, but because there is one more Acharya, it is Abhinava Vidyatirtha Swami. So Vivekinam, one who is endowed with Viveka, discrimination. Vivekinam Mahaprajñam, one with great intelligence. Dhairya Audarya Kshamanidhim, one who is a repository of Dhairya. Dhairya is being firm in something, not being fickle. The ability to fix one's mind on something even when there is cause for the mind to be shaken. That is Dhairya. Audarya. Audarya is magnanimity, the ability to give. Audarya Kshama. Kshama is forbearance. So one who is the repository of these three gunas. Dhairya Audarya Kshamanidhim sada abhinava purvam tam vidyatirtha gurum bhaje. So up until here, the practice is that these shlokas are all composed by the Uttaradhikaris. So for example, this shloka on Abhinava Vidyatirtha Swami was composed by Bharati Tirtha Mahaswami. The shloka on Chandrasekhara Bharati Swami was written by Abhinava Vidyatirtha Swami, usually after the Purvacharya's Videha Mukti. So once the Purvacharya leaves off their physical body and their sannidhi is being built, their adhisthana is being built, along with that, the Uttaradhikari writes a shloka on the Purvacharya, and that is what is put into the Guru Parampara Stotra. And then of course we have the two Acharyas today, Bharati Mahaswami and Abhinava Vidheshekhara Bharati Mahaswami. So with these shlokas, the shloka portion of the Guru Vandana finishes. And then it is customary to tell a portion of the Dahara Vidya from Mahanarayana Upanishad, starting from Na Karmana Na Prajaya Dhanena. So this Dahara Vidya is a very important part of the Mahanarayana Upanishad. So until then, various methods of doing upasana of Atma have been talked about. And then this Dahara Vidya is yet another way of looking at that Atma, wherein it starts Anoraniyan, Mahato Mahiyan. It is the smallest of the small, the largest of the large. Atma Guhayam Nihitaha. The Atma is hidden within the cave of the heart. And who sees him? Tam Akratuh Pashyati. Akratu, someone who has no sankalpas. Kratu in this case does not refer to a yaga but to a sankalpa. So someone who has renounced all sankalpas, someone who has renounced all ownership of action, he sees that Atma in its true form. So the first half, this Dahara Vidya itself is split into two halves. The first half follows this vein, talking about Atma, what is Atma like, who sees Atma, who knows Atma, where is Atma to be meditated upon, Hagamsa Shuchishat. He is meditated upon as Hamsa, as Surya in Shuchishat, within the pure orb of the sun. Vasuhu Antariksha Sat, as the luminaries within the Antariksha, within the sky. Vedesha Dadhiri Durona Sat, as the Agni that is seated within the Vedi, within the Agni Yaga Mantapa of any yagas. So talking about Atma like this. The second half then talks about who knows this Atma, what is the means to know this Atma. And the second half starts Na Karmana, Na Prajaya, Dhanena, Tyage Naike, Amritattva Manashuhu. So this is from where we start telling usually during Guru Vandana. It is not by karma, it is not through doing yagas or pujas or homas or vratas. Na prajaya, it is not through having santana. Na karmana, na prajaya dhanena, it is not through amassing wealth that people attain moksha, that people attain amritattva. But tyagena, it is through renunciation, it is through giving up, it is through sannyasa, which is why later we get sannyasa yoga yataya shuddha sattvaha within this very same portion of Upanishad. It is through sannyasa that these yatis find true fruition. And then it goes, and then usually the last mantra is the one that is the most important, that we hear the most. Yo vedādau svarah proktaha vedante cha pratisthitaha tasya prakritilinasya yah paras samaheshwaraha. This is the most important mantra of the entire Dahara Vidya. Which is why even now when we do Guru Vandana, usually when we do Bhiksha Vandana, when we take fruits in Sringeri, as we offer them there, this is the mantra that is told to do offering. Because this is the culmination of the upasana that one needs to do to understand that Atma. So it starts with Yo vedādau svarah proktaha. That svara, that akshara that is told in the Vedadi, that all Vedas commence with, which is the Omkara. Right? So no Veda mantra is told without telling Onkar in the beginning. Whether you start from Agni Vele Purohitam or Ishetvarjetva, whichever Veda you start with, you must have the Onkara before. Right? Even Kalidasa says Pranavaschandasamiva. He was the first of all kings, as Pranava was the first of all Veda mantras. Right? So vedādau swarah proktaha. That Onkara, that is the commencement of all the Vedas. And simultaneously, Vedantecha pratishtitaha. That Onkara which is discerned, that Onkara which is talked about, discussed in the Vedantas. Right? There are plenty of Upanishadic passages that talk about Onkara. Omit Yidgītham upaseta. This is how Chandogya starts. And then Omiti Brahma, Omiti Idagam Sarvam. These are portions of Taittiriya. Right? So Om is nothing but Brahma Paraparyayam, Bhagavad Pada says. Right? Om is nothing but another name of Brahman. If Brahman is the abstract concept, if you are giving it a name, the name is Om. So that Onkara, which is told before all the Vedas and is talked about, is discussed in the Upanishads, that Onkara, Tasya Prakriti Leenasya, that Onkara is Prakriti Leena. That Onkara is dissolved into Prakriti. So here Sayanacharya writes that we need to split up Onkara into three forms. So A, U and Ma. The Akara is to be meditated upon as Virat, the Ukara is meditated upon as Hiranyagarbha, and the Makara is Avyakta Prakriti. Right? So these are just various forms of the Jiva through all the avasthas. So Virat is the Jiva in the Sthula Sharira, Hiranyagarbha is the Samashti in the Sukshma Sharira, and then after that you have the Avidya in the Karana Sharira. That Avidya is the Avyakta Prakriti that is talked about as the Makara. So the process of meditation here is you take the Sthula Sharira and merge it into the Sukshma Sharira. This is what happens during a dream. The Sthula Sharira ceases to work, right? The gross body ceases to work, and it is the mind and the Indriyas that are at play. And then after that, as you slip into Sushupti, the next step happens wherein the Sukshma Sharira merges into Avidya, into the Karana Sharira, which is Chaitanya plus Avidya. But it merges into Avidya, wherein now not even the mind or the Indriyas are at play, but it is just our true nature as Ananda, veiled by Maya, veiled by Avidya, which is why we experience happiness, but are not aware at the time that we are experiencing happiness when we are in Sushupti, when we are in deep sleep. Right? So that is the Akara, Ukara, Makaras of the Onkara. Each represents that particular avastha, that particular state. So there, Sayana writes that the Akara needs to dissolve into the Ukara, and the Ukara needs to dissolve into the Makara. The Makara is Prakriti, so Tasya Prakriti Leenasya. It is this Onkara that over time gets dissolved into the Prakriti. But it is not this Onkara that is the end goal. Yaf Paraha. Tasya Prakriti Leenasya Yaf Paraha. There is something more that is beyond even this Onkara, that is the embodiment of the three avasthas. Right? So that is what we call the Turiya. Advaita Sarvabhavanam Devas Turyo Vibhusmritaha is what the Gaudapada Karika there is. So that Deva, right, that Prakashana Shila, that Chaitanya, that is Turya, the fourth. Right? Fourth meaning beyond the three. That Deva is Advaita. That Deva is without a second. That Deva is the oneness that is latent in all multiplicity. Right? So that Deva is what is beyond the Onkara, what is beyond the three avasthas, and he is Yaf Paraha Sa Maheshwaraha. That is the Maheshwara, that is the Atma, that is the Ishvara, that is responsible for the Srishti Sthiti Layas of the world or the Srishti Sthiti Layas of the body. Right? Just as the individual body goes through the avasthas, in the same way the entire cosmos also goes through these same three avasthas. Right? So it is that Ishvara on the individual level as the Jiva, on the cosmic level as the Ishvara, that is being meditated upon as Atma. And the means of getting to this Atma is through the Onkara. Right? So this mantra being such a loaded mantra, it being the essence of the Atma Vidya and also of the Onkara that we need to meditate upon to understand Atma, this is the mantra that is told if we want to do this portion, the Veda mantra portion of the Guru Vandana in a Sankshepa form. This mantra is the most important part of that. And then from there, we come to the Birudavali, starting from śrīmadparamahaṃsaparivrājakācāryavarya, that is one. padavākyapramāṇapārāvārapārīṇa, 2. Yamaniyamasana pranayama pratyahara dharana dhyana samadhyashtanga yoganusthana nishtha, 3. Tapaścakravarti, number 4. Anadya vichinna Shri Shankaracharya Guru Parampara Prapta, that is 5. ṣaḍdarśanasthāpanācārya, 6. vyākhyānasiṃhāsanādhīśvara, 7. sakalanigamāgamasārahṛdaya, 8. sāṅkhyatrayapratipādaka, 9. vaidikamārgapravartaka 10, sarvatantrasvatantra 11, Adirajadhani, Vidyanagara Maharajadhani, Karnataka-simhāsana-pratisthāpanācārya. All of this is one name. So 12. Karnataka-simhāsana-pratisthāpanācārya, śrīmadrājādhirājaguru 13, bhūmaṇḍalācārya 14, ṛṣyaśṛṅgapuravarādhīśvara 15, tuṅgabhadrātīravāsi 16, śrīmadvidyāśaṅkarapādapadmārādhaka 17. So these 17 titles form the Birudavali, and then from there it is customary we have Abhinavadvidyātirtha Guru Karakamala Sanjata, and then we say Bharatirtha Mahaswami, and then Vidhushekara Bharati Mahaswami Charanarvindayoha Sāṣṭanga Pranaman Samarpayamaha. We offer our namaskaras to the feet of Bharatirtha Mahaswami, who has come from Abhinavadvidyātirtha Swami, as well as to Vidhushekara Bharati Swami, who has come from Bharatirtha Mahaswami. So the custom here is you offer namaskaras to the current Pīṭhādipati onwards, while saying that this current Pīṭhādipati has come from his Guru. So, for example, in Abhinavadvidyātirtha Mahaswami's time, the format would have been Shri Chandrasekhara Bharati Mahaswami Guru Karakamala Sanjata, Sringeri Jagadguru, Srimad Abhinavadvidyātirtha Mahaswaminam, Charanarvindayoha Sāṣṭanga Pranaman Samarpayamaha. So that is the custom when telling the last portion of this Birudavali. But if we look at each name that this has, it gives us not only a lot of information about why we should respect our acharyas, but also a lot of information on the history of the matha, a lot of information on the nature of sannyasa, a lot of information on what differentiates the pitha from other shakha mathas or other mathas that may have been established by other acharyas and other sannyasis. So the first line we have is śrīmadparamahaṃsaparivrājakācāryavarya, right? The greatest acharya of Paramahaṃsaparivrājakas. These are all terms that we hear. The word parivrājaka means sannyasi in general. Bhikshu, parivrat, sannyasi, parashari, yatha maskari. Bhikshu, parivrat or parivrājaka, sannyasi, parashari, maskari. These are all words that refer to someone who has taken up sannyasa, the ashrama of sannyasa. But there are two words here, paramahaṃsaparivrājaka. So this sannyasa is being qualified by being a paramahamsa. So if we want to look at what a paramahamsa is, Vidyaranya Swami has written a text called Jivan Mukti Viveka. So within this Jivan Mukti Viveka, he is basically talking about two types of sannyasa. There are two types of sannyasa. One is Vidvat sannyasa, one is Vividisha sannyasa. Vidvat sannyasa is sannyasa, renunciation that is done by someone who is realized. The other type, Vividisha sannyasa, is someone who is the sannyasa that is taken up in order to realize Brahman. Right? So one who is realized will give up all material bonds, and they will take up the sannyasa ashrama. The other option is someone who has great vairagya, someone who has great virakti, will also relinquish all worldly bonds and will also take up sannyasa so that they can then undergo shravana manana nididhyasana in a more intense way. So while discussing these two, first he classifies vairagya into two forms. So vairagya is manda and tīvra. So manda vairagya, he says, is whenever a family member passes away, whenever we lose wealth, right, whenever giving birth, there are two terms called smashana vairagya and prasuti vairagya. All human beings go through incredible vairagya at two times. The mother while giving birth and the son while returning from the cemetery. Right? So the mother while giving birth is obviously is greatly in pain. So she says, what is the use of this samsara? I should have taken up sannyasa before. The mother thinks that. The children while coming back from the cemetery will say, the person that has raised me all my life, the people that I have loved all my life, they are ashes at the end. What use are these human bonds? What use are these relationships? So both during prasuti and in the smashana, intense vairagya comes, but it dissipates almost instantly the second we come home. Right? This vairagya lasts only a couple of days at the max. So Acharya says that this vairagya is classified manda vairagya. This is the lowest of the vairagyas. And he says, mande nyaso nakadachana. You should never take sannyasa if this is the vairagya that you have. You're angry with the wife, the son did not get good marks, you lost your investment, you should not take sannyasa then. Right? And then he takes tīvra vairagya. Tīvra vairagya he splits into two. Again, there is tīvra vairagya and tīvra tara vairagya. So intense vairagya and excessively intense vairagya. So for someone that has intense vairagya, he has prescribed two means. So he says, there is kutichakaha bahudascha ubhaveto tridandino. You can either be yatradyashakti shakti bhedat. If you can do yatra and you have tivra virakti, you can be a kutichaka, or you can be a bahuda. If you cannot do yatra, you can be a kutichaka. If you can do yatra, you can be a bahudaka. So these are two types of sannyasis. The bahuda sannyasi is one that goes to bahu uda, many tirthas. He goes from tirtha to tirtha, moving from kshetra to kshetra, not being attached to any one place. The other type is called a kutichaka, who stays in a kutira. He cannot do yatra ashakti. Right? He is incapable of doing yatra either due to old age or due to limited resources. So he stays in a hut somewhere, relinquishing all material pleasures there, and he does his sadhana there. So this is someone that has reasonable vairagya. Now if you have tivra tara vairagya, so if you have truly intense vairagya, then again Acharya gives two. So he says brahmaloka moksha vibhedataha. There nyase tivra vairagye tivratare. When vairagya is tivratara, you can get moksha either in brahmaloka or here itself. So brahmaloka moksha vibhedataha. The difference being that there are two ways to moksha. You can either through intense sadhana attain a spot in brahmaloka wherein Brahma will give you brahmajnana, or you can get brahmajnana in this world itself and be released the moment that you leave the body off. This is what we call videha mukti and jivan mukti. Jivan mukti is attained when moksha sthiti is attained here and now. You get jnana in this world with the body. The other option is abrahma bhuvanal lokah punaravartino arjuna, Bhagavan says. So all the lokas up to brahmaloka have returned. So you go to bhuloka, bhuvarloka, suvarloka, janoloka, tapoloka, all the way up to there. You will go to that loka, experience the punyas, and then return to bhuloka. But when you go to brahmaloka, there is no return. You will go to brahmaloka, you will stay there until the pralaya kala, samprapte pratisanchare. So once the pralaya kala comes, then Chaturmukha Brahma or Hiranyagarbha does upadesha of brahmajnana. The soul by that point is elevated in his sadhana enough that he will understand it there, get mukti, and thereby get released. So this is called videha mukti, wherein you need to, or krama mukti, wherein you need to go to a different loka to get moksha there. But the best option that Advaita gives us is jivan mukti, wherein through the words of the Guru, through meditation upon the Mahavakyas, you get moksha here and now. So moksha, that someone that gets moksha in Brahmaloka is called a Hamsa Sannyasi. Someone that is a Jivan Mukta is called a Paramahamsa. So that is where this term originates. Talloke tattvavit hamsaha. Lokesmin parahamsakaha. It is said. So someone who gets moksha in Talloka, in Brahmaloka, he is called a Hamsa Sannyasi. Someone that gets moksha in this world is called a Paramahamsa. So that is where the term Paramahamsa comes from. And then within Paramahamsa, there are two types. Jignasur jnanavanshteva, Parahamsod vidhamataha. Within the Paramahamsas, there is a Jignasu Paramahamsa, namely one who wants to get moksha in this world itself, but is still trying to get that jnana. And Jnanavan, someone who wants to get moksha in here and now and has gotten that jnana. So someone that has gotten jnana here and now is the best of the Paramahamsas. Which is why we have Paramahaṃsaparivrājakācāryavarya, the best of all the Paramahamsas and all the Parivrajakas that we have. So within sannyasis, the Paramahamsa is the highest. Within the Paramahamsas, the Paramahamsa that is realized is the highest. And our Acharyas embody that ideal. So Paramahaṃsaparivrājakācāryavarya. That is the first term that we have. Then next we have padavākyapramāṇapārāvārapārīṇa. This is a talk this testifies not to Acharya's jnana in terms of Brahma Vidya, but rather to Shastra Panditya. So pada refers to Vyakarana, Vakya refers to Mimamsa, padavākyapramāṇa refers to Nyaya, Tarka. Paravara is an ocean. Parīṇa is someone who has crossed that. So our Acharyas have crossed over the three oceans of Vyakarana, Mimamsa and Nyaya. This is a very old term. This is a term that we see in many granthas. Even Bhavabhuti, when writing his Uttara Ramacharitra, says Shrikantha pada lanchanaha padavākyapramāṇajñaha jātukarna sutaha jātukarna putro bhavabhutir nama. He says, while Bhavabhuti is introducing himself, he says, I am attached to the padas of Shrikantha. I am the son of, my mother's name is Jatukarni, and I am padavākyapramāṇajña. I have studied Vyakarana, Mimamsa and Nyaya. So why is it that these three shastras are taken up? Because even in the Vakyartha Sadas, in the Ganapati Vakyartha Sadas, it is mainly these three shastras that are put up for Goshti. It is these three shastras that people do Vakyartha on. So these three shastras are prerequisites for Vedanta to be done perfectly. You do not have to do all three, but if all three are done, Vedanta sadhana can be done very nicely in terms of the shastra. So first we have pada. Vyakarana is necessary for everything, because if you want to know what a word means, you need to know how the word carries the meaning. How is that word derived? What is the prakriti? What is the pratyaya? What is the root? What is the suffix added on that? What is the meaning of the root? What is the meaning of the suffix? How does this work when put into a sentence structure? Right? So all of the grammatical syntax that you need to analyze Upanishad and that you need to analyze sutras and their bhashyas, you will get that from Vyakarana. And then padavākya. Vakya Shastra is Mimamsa, because Mimamsa does not deal with the derivation of words, but Mimamsa is more so concerned with interpretation. So when you have a passage, when you have a book, when you have a chapter, how do you draw meaning from it? How do you discern where the intent of that passage lies? So, what is the verb? Where does the verb apply to? Right? Does the verb apply to the subject or the object? Right? Which part of the verb is the important part of the sentence? All of this vichara is done in Mimamsa. But the thing is, Mimamsa is applied to the Purva Kanda of Veda. Mimamsa is used to determine how to do yagas properly. Because the the situation in Veda is that the yagas and the homas and the ishtis that we need to do not come in perfect order. The mantras are not always in order, and not all yagas are described completely in a straight line. So what they will do is they will give you one Prakriti Yaga. There will be one Yaga that they describe completely in detail. They will tell you how to put the chiti, they will tell you how to put the bricks, they will tell you which ahutis to do to which devatas, how many times, all of that will come. But by the time it comes to the second Yaga, they won't give you the entire description. They will just say, these devatas change these devatas to these devatas. If there is Indra there, put Agni here. If there is Varuna there, put Soma here. If there was this Dravya there, put this Dravya here. If it was Ajya there, do Dadhi here. If it was ghee there, put curd here. They will just change whatever it is that is different from one yaga to the other without elaborating the complete nature of the next yaga. So in order to make sense of these vakyas that are all mixed together, perhaps not in the exact order, it is necessary that there needs to be an intellectual proper system of deriving meaning from a passage. And this comes into a lot of use when you get into Vedanta, because to this day people still have debates on what Tattvamasi means. Right? Does it mean that you are Atma? Does it mean that you are the Jiva? Does it mean that you are the Jiva in particular situations? Does it mean you belong to Ishvara? These all are things to be discerned based on the passage. Right? If the passage is talking about the Jiva, then yes, Tat will refer to the Jiva. If the passage is talking about Ishvara, then Tat will refer to Ishvara. So it is imperative that there has to be an academic way of understanding passages and chapters within a text in order to get a Mahatatparya or Ekavakyata. Right? You want the entire understanding of a text to be unbroken. You need to be able to fit it into a single sentence. So in order to do that, Mimamsa is necessary. And then Pramana. So Nyaya is called Pramana because Nyaya does not really deal much with moksha. Nyaya does not deal much with interpretation. Nyaya deals with mostly perception. How does direct perception happen? Pratyaksha. How does inference happen? Anumana. How does simile happen? Upamana. And then Shabda. How are words interpreted in order for us to know things? Right? Pramanas are the means to knowledge. Prama being knowledge. Pramana being the means to knowledge. Right? So, for example, they will say, if we are seeing something that is Pratyaksha, the manas unites with the indriya unites with the object of perception, and then once that happens, knowledge happens. So when the manas goes to the chakshu and the chakshu falls on a book, then knowledge of the book happens. In the same way, when you are doing an inference, right, an anumana, you will say there is smoke on the mountain, therefore there is fire there. Right? This is the inference you are doing. You have not seen the fire. Right? The eye has not made contact with the fire. But having seen the smoke, you will say that there is fire in this. Yatra yatra dhomaha tatra tatra vanhihi. Wherever there is smoke, there is fire there. And then smoke is found within the mountain. And then you will also give a drishtanta, a simile. I have seen this in my kitchen. Right? When I put a log into the fire there, I have seen that where there is fire, there is smoke. You will also have to say the reverse. Where there is no fire, there is no smoke. As I have seen in the case of water in a lake, there is no fire there. There is no smoke there because there is no fire. However, in my kitchen there is smoke because there is fire. Therefore, in the mountain also I see smoke, therefore there must be fire there. Right? So these are the processes that have to go on within a mind for inference to happen. For us, it is a very simple step. We see smoke there, we say, okay, there is fire there. But what are all the inner workings of that, right? There needs to be vyapti, there needs to be avyabhichara, all of these, the hetu has to be in the paksha. All of this is the concern of nyaya. And we need nyaya in order to postulate things. So nyaya, what it does is, along with all of this talk of how we perceive things, it also gives us a framework to argue, right? This anumana in particular is very simple in that you will have a cause, an effect, and a reason. That is generally the way it is structured. So parvato vanhiman, dhūmavatvat, the mountain has fire because there is smoke there. So this structure of inference is used throughout our granthas to argue any point. They will say, the body is not atma because it is insentient. For example, shariram na atma jadatvat. It will be something like that, and from there on they will argue the point. Yes, no, why, where are the pramanas for this? Where are the places where this has been talked about in Shastra? What are other darshanas topics on this? That all follows from there. But this method of discussion is drawn from Nyaya. So therefore, if you have Vyakarana, Mimamsa and Nyaya together down pat, it will be very easy for someone to study Vedanta and come to the academic conclusions quickly, for them to corroborate their sadhana, right? Because academic pursuit is one stream of consciousness, and the actual sadhana, the actual vichara that needs to be done, the actual contemplation on Atma that needs to be done is the second track. These two need to have some mutual feedback. This needs to corroborate this, but the academic track will not give you moksha bereft of the actual sadhana itself. So if this Shastra Adhyayana is also done, that helps a lot with the Atma Vichara. And our acharyas have crossed the ocean of these three Shastras, padavākyapramāṇapārāvārapārīṇa. And then, as we said, it is not enough to be academically inclined, there also needs to be some inner sadhana contemplation done. This is attained through yoga, which is why the next line is Yama Niyama Asana Pranayama Pratyahara Dharana Dhyana Samadhi Ashtanga Yoga Anusthana Nishtha. One who is nishtha, established in the performance of the Ashtanga Yoga that Patanjali has given us. And these 8 limbs are listed out: Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. These are the 8 limbs. More so 8 steps almost. So the Yamas and Niyamas tell us do's and don'ts. So Yamas are Satya, Swadhyaya, these kinds of things are Yamas. And then Shaucha, Ishvara Pranidhana, these are all the Niyamas. So do's and don'ts. Shaucha, Satya, Asteya, Aparigraha, Brahmacharya, these are all Niyamas. Do not steal, do not lie. These 5 are the Yamas. And then things to be done: do Ishvara Upasana, do Swadhyaya, have Santosha, have Shaucha. The things that we are supposed to do come in the Niyamas. Yama, Niyama, Asana. Asana is not the asanas that we do these days. Those are extrapolated later on. But in Patanjali's terminology, asana is anything that is comfortable and can be held for a long period of time for the sadhaka to engage the mind without having to worry about the body. If you have sat for an hour and your knees start to hurt, it is very hard to focus on the mind. So sthira sukham asanam. That which is firm and that which is comfortable to be in is asana. And then pranayama, control of the breath, the breath going in and out. Control of the breath is greatly helpful to control of the mind, that is pranayama. Pratyahara is restraint of the indriyas. Tataha parama indriyanam vashyata. Tatah parama vashyata indriyanam is what Patanjali says there. After doing pratyahara, literally pulling back. Pratyahara means to do upasamhara, to retract. The indriyas fall under the control of the sadhaka and he is able to retract them from the outworld world as and when he pleases. Yama Niyamasana Pranayama Pratyahara Dharana. Dharana is the ability to fix the mind upon one thing. Tatra deshabandha chittasya dharana. So the ability to fix the mind upon a particular object or a particular entity is called dharana. However, for us, that usually takes the form of a succession of thoughts, right? So it is, our focus on an object is not an unbroken succession of one thought. Rather, it is a series of thoughts that can all be sajatiya. So we can have several thoughts that have the same object. That will be dharana. But if we can take that one step higher, not even have the mind change from thought to thought, but sustain the same thought without it changing focus or even a difference within the same thought, that is called dharana dhyana. So it is tatra pratyaya ekatanata. The ability to have one pratyaya. One pratyaya is one thought, one cognition in an ekatana way, without there being any multiplicity within that, is called dhyana. And then the last stage is samadhi. So this is what yoga says to be the highest form of meditation, wherein the sadhaka's identity falls away. So it is as though it is kartrushunya. It is as though nothing exists except the object of meditation, and there is no distinction between that and the meditator. At that point it is said that samadhi is attained. So these are the 8 limbs of yoga that are practiced by our acharyas every day, starting almost at 4:30 in the morning until Shastra Patha starts at 7. So for those 2.5 hours in the morning, along with mantra japa and all of that, this yoga anushtana is what is going on in our acharya schedule. Yoga anushthanashtha tapaścakravarti, the master, the emperor of tapas. We will talk about this more when we get to the vyākhyānasiṃhāsanā, but it is very simple. Tapas is austerity. So yad dushkaram, yad durabam, yad durgan, yaccha dushkaram, tat sarvam tapasa sadhyam. So anything that is hard, anything that is impossible, anything that we cannot attain can be attained through tapas. Which is why we go to acharyas to seek their blessings. If we feel something is hard to attain, if we feel that something is unattainable, even if something is out of reach, we go to the acharyas because they have stored up on the tapas, which allows the impossible to become possible. Tapas is spoken of in many ways. Restraint, right? Austerity is one way to do it. Upanishad says, tapaiti tapo nityah paurishashtihi, swadhyaya pravachane veti nako maudgalyaha. So swadhyaya and pravachana, study and teaching, these are also forms of tapas. So of those many variegated forms of tapas, our acharyas engage in almost all of them. Tapaścakravarti. Then we get anādyavicchinna Sri Shankaracārya Guru Parampara Prapta. These acharyas who are obtained Prapta through the Anadi Avichinna Shankaracārya Guru Parampara. Through the Guru Parampara of Shankaracārya, and then we have 2 qualifications there. It is Anadi and Avichinna. It is primordial and unbroken. These 2 are very special and very important visheshanas, adjectives to be put there. The first being that this is anadi. Something that is true, right? Something that is valid should not have, a birth date. There is no question as to when gravity started to be true. There is no question of when the 4 forces of the universe became a reality. As long as the world existed, those were existent. In the same way, if we are saying that this is the Paramasiddhanta, if we are saying that this is the highest truth, there should not be a start date to it. Which is why this parampara that carries that knowledge is also anadi. Which is why our parampara starts with Narayana or with Shiva. We have Narayana Samarambham or Sadashiva Samarambham. Both pathas exist. So starting at the anadi, there is no beginning for this parampara, which is why we postulate Bhagavan, Ishvara himself as the start of this. The second being Anadi Avichinna. There was no break in the middle of this parampara. This is important because we know that then there was no change in the way that this jnana is transmitted. If the student heard it directly from the mouth of the teacher, we know that he has obtained it exactly as the teacher wished him to. And not only that, if the student gets it straight from the teacher can also verify that the student has obtained it as the teacher also understood it. Right? So unfortunately, in the other 3 pithas, in Badari, Dwaraka and Govardhana Pitha in Puri, Badari, Dwaraka and Puri, the parampara was not avichinna. There were some breaks that happened in the middle, following which Acharya himself appointed other sannyasis to go and take up the mantle of the Acharyatva in those pithas as well. But luckily, in Sringeri, we have never had a break in that parampara. We have the records of all the acharyas from Bhagavad-pada. We have the records of when they presided over the pitha. We have the dates. There was no break in the middle. So that is one vishesha. That is one unique quality that the Sringeri parampara has. Anādyavicchinna Sri Shankaracārya Guru Parampara Prapta. ṣaḍdarśanasthāpanācārya. So from here, some of the visheshanas came with Bhagavad-pada. Some visheshanas came with Vidyāranya Swami. So this, for example, came with Bhagavad-pada, where ṣaḍdarśanasthāpanācārya. There are 2 interpretations for this. So at that time, at Bhagavad-pada's time, there were several methods of worship, several devataradhanas going on that were conflicting, that were fighting with each other, contradictory to Veda, contradictory to Sattvic practices, contrary to good practice. So what Bhagavad-pada did was he consolidated all of those devataradhanas into the Panchayatana system. So those 5 devatas, Aditya, Vishnu, Shiva, Devi and Ganesha. And then you add Subramanya to that. So these 6 devatas that we worship today in Sanatana Dharma were codified by Bhagavad Pada. So there we have ṣaḍdarśanasthāpanācārya. The other meaning also being, at that time the avaidika matas were in vogue. So avaidika matas being the darshanas that do not take Vedas as pramana, meaning the Jaina, Charvaka, Bauddhas. So the Charvakas, Jainas, and there are 4 shakhas of Bauddhas. The Sautrantikas, Madhyamikas, all of these are different shakhas, different branches of the Bauddha philosophy. All Bauddhas also do not agree with each other. So these 6 are called the Nastika Darshanas, and then you have Sankhya Yoga, Nyaya Vaisheshika, and Purva Uttara Mimamsas, which are the 6 Astika Darshanas. So by establishing Veda Pramanya, which Kumarala Bhatta also we need to give a good deal of credit to, by establishing the Veda Pramanya, Bhagavad Pada became ṣaḍdarśanasthāpanācārya, wherein he affirmed the 6 darshanas that took the Veda as their basis rather than those that did not. Then vyākhyānasiṃhāsanādhīśvara. This is another very interesting name, because people want to know what this vyākhyānasiṃhāsana is. What is this throne? There is no actual throne in Sringeri. This vyākhyānasiṃhāsana is a metaphorical one. It is a title given to whoever sits upon that pitha. Right? Just as when we say Sharada Pītham, there is no Pītham that is being carried from place to place. There is an asana that Acharya has. One stays in Sringeri, one comes with Acharya and Vijayayatra. So when we see Acharya and Vijayayatra, the Pitha that they sit on is the travel Pītham. The actual Pītham that they sit on stays in Sringeri. But besides that, there is no actual throne per se that is attached to the Acharyas there. This vyākhyānasiṃhāsana simply refers to a throne of knowledge. Right? Vyākhyāna is explanation, the ability to interpret anything from our scriptures, the ability to give holdings, to give tirmanas, to give a nirnaya on any conflict that we see, the ability to answer any question. That is the vyākhyāna of which the acharyas are presiding over. That is the simhasana that they preside over. Which is why it is the case that whenever devalayas, whenever they have any problems as to what to do, let us say that worship has been broken in a temple somewhere, or the question is that someone wants to donate land to a temple, but the temple doesn't know how to accept the land. Or if there is a question of conflicting sampradayas in a temple. For example, there will be some temples that will be built as per Vaishnavagamas, as per Pancharatra Siddhanta. But those temples will come into the hands of smartas. So then which agama do you run the temple per? Do you run it as per the Vaishnavagamas or do you do the smartagamas? So whenever any questions of Shastra come in this way, it can be temple issues or it can be even personal issues. My father used to do this sadhana, should I continue that? I want this mantra, what should I do? I have this mantra, but the guru I got it from is not a proper guru, what do I do? All of these questions that people come from, acharyas need to have A, the responsibility, and B, the capability in order to give their holdings, in order to give their decisions on such topics. So it is that throne, metaphorically, figuratively, that they sit upon. It is that assumption of the vyākhyāna of our shastras that they do that comes with being the Jagadguru. Right? So even this term Jagadguru, I guess we need to discuss. Our acharyas, especially Chandrasekhara Bharati Swami, has said it is not that I must assert my dominance as a guru over everyone else, but rather it is the reverse. I have the responsibility to be a guru to anyone in the world that comes to me. Namely, some people, they only have some students and everyone else is not their responsibility. But when I am sitting here as an acharya, that is a Jagadguru, it is my responsibility. Someone can come from the US, someone can come from Africa, someone can be, Purusha, Stri, any Varna, any Ashrama, it does not matter. Anyone that comes to me seeking help, I am duty bound by this Jagadguru title in order to give them the help that they seek. Right? So that is the responsibility that this throne has. Just as a king's throne has the responsibility of looking after the prosperity materially of its people, in the same way, the acharyas being sannyasis and tapasvis sitting on this throne, it is their responsibility to ensure that their constituents, namely astikas, are all prospering in their sadhanas. Maybe not so materially the way a king would look after, but because their realm is spiritual, it is their job to make sure that all their constituents are prospering in the spiritual realm. And it is also, therefore, the tapas simhasana comes before the raja simhasana in the Birudavali also. The vyākhyānasiṃhāsana comes before they talk about the Karnataka simhasana and Vijayanagara and Harihara and Bukka and all that. Right? It is a reminder that the acharyas, for them, it is tapas that comes first. All other rajabhogas or rajamaryadas come after. vyākhyānasiṃhāsanādhīśvara. sakalanigamāgamasārahṛdaya. One whose heart, one whose intent, one whose knowledge is the essence of all nigamas and agamas. Nigama refers to Veda. Agama refers to the corpus of text that is derived from Veda, usually refers to Tantra, so Mantra Shastra. Right? So mantras are of two kinds. There are Vaidika mantras and Tantrika mantras. So this Śrīvidya, for example, and this Navakshari, Medha Dakshinamurti, these mantras, generally speaking, are Tantrika mantras. These Ganapati, Uchishta Ganapati, Vallabha Ganapati, these are all mostly Tantrika mantras. They are found in Tantra. The Vaidika mantras are things like Rudra, Aruna, the parts that are found in Samhita Veda. There are some mantras that span both. For example, the Panchakshari is found both in Veda as well as in Tantra. So some things like that are there. But generally speaking, mantras fall into one of these two categories. So it is the practice that all the acharyas that sit on the vyākhyānasiṃhāsana, all the acharyas that become the Jagadgurus of Sringeri, finish Vedadhyayana before they become sannyasis, right? Because sannyasis do not have Vedadhikara. But all the people need to be first Yajurvedadhyayis, and they need to belong to the Yajurveda Shakha and finish Adhyayana of Sampurna Yajurveda. So for example, Sannidhanam finished his Kramapatha in his Purvashrama before he took sannyasa of Yajurveda. So in the same way, Nigama and then Agama, Mantra Shastra. It is almost surprising how many mantras acharyas have that they do Upadesha of people to. Because it is one thing to do Upadesha of all of those mantras to people. But in order to do Upadesha, you need to first have Upadesha, and if you have Upadesha, you need to do all of those mantras. So it is almost scary how many mantras that they have to do every day. Rama, Krishna, the whole sequence of Śrīvidya, Narasimha, Shiva, Dakshinamurti, Ganapati, all the other Devi mantras, Lakshmi, Saraswati. How many mantras acharyas give people is one thing to note. And then the mantra anushtana that they themselves need to do, how much time do they have in the morning? It becomes very surprising if we look at the amount of upasana that they get done amidst the number of mantras that they need to do and the limited time that they have. But yet, they remain, as we said in the Slokas, right, mantra nidhi. They remain at a very highly elevated level in upasana and capable of giving upadesha of any mantra to most people that come to them. So, sakalanigamāgamasārahṛdaya. Then, sāṅkhyatrayapratipādaka. One who teaches the three Saṅkhyas. So, Sankhya usually refers to Sankhya and Yoga, but we extend it here to mean Sankhya, Yoga and Advaita. Right? So the reason that Acharyas talk about these three is, quite frankly, Sankhya and Vedanta conflict in many regards. So the Sankhya philosophy is different from the Advaita philosophy. In that, in Sankhya, Purusha and Prakriti are both equally real. And the Jagat is also equally real by extension. The Jagat is born from Prakriti and they all have the same level of satta, of reality. Whereas in Advaita, we say that Prakriti we cannot determine, right? Maya we cannot determine if it is Sat or Asat, and the Jagat is Mithya. So there are points whereupon Advaita and Sankhya differ. But yet Sankhya is very important to the Advaiti because we get most of our classification of the world from Sankhya. So the Chaturvimshati Tattvas and then the Purusha beyond that. This division of the world that to us is pretty much what we get in the first day's class of Vedanta. Right? The Panchabhutas, then the Panchagnānendriyas, Panchakarmendriyas, Buddhi, and Avyakta Prakriti and Prakriti. This division of the world that we have, that is pretty much in the first lines of Tattvabodha. Right? This division is given to us by Sankhya, which is why the Sankhya philosophy is called Sankhya. That which has Sankhya is called Sankhya. That which counts, that divides, that tallies everything properly, Sankhya. The other meaning of it is samyak khyāpayati. It explains very well. It explains the difference between Purusha and Prakriti very well. It explains the difference between Prakriti and the world very well. It explains the difference between the Bhutas and the Bhuta Srishti very well. Right? So the Panchabhutas are different from their effects. So all of this is put out very nicely in the Sankhya philosophy. So it is important that the Vedantins study Sankhya for two reasons. A, they have some philosophies that we wish to keep going. And the second is something called Prathama Malla Nibarhana Nyaya. Right? So if there is a wrestling competition, you do not have to fight everyone in the competition. Whoever beats everyone else in that competition, if you defeat that person, it is obvious that you are stronger than everyone else that competed. In the same way, Sankhya is the philosophy that makes the most sense besides Vedanta. So Sankhya is stronger than Nyaya, Sankhya is stronger than the Vaisheshika philosophy, Sankhya is stronger than the Charvakas, Bauddhas and Jainas. So the Advaitin does not have to go and refute all of those one by one. The Sankhya philosophy is enough to refute those, and then if the Advaitin can just refute the Sankhya, then it is assumed that he can also refute all the others, and therefore Advaita can be kept as the top. Which is why Sankhya in a very roundabout way ends up becoming very important for the student to study. Which is why time and time again in the Brahma Sutra Bhashya, Bhagavad-pada keeps coming back to the Sankhya philosophy. The Nyaya he deals with the Pancharatra school, he deals with the Bhagavata school, he deals with the Pashupata school, he deals with in the places through the Bhashya here and there. But the main Siddhanta that Bhagavad-pada keeps coming back to is the Sankhya philosophy because it comes so close to Advaita. It is incredibly close to Advaita. So, sāṅkhyatrayapratipādaka. So, the Sankhya philosophy, the yoga, as we said, no one has any conflict with yoga because yoga is a system of practice. Yoga does not concern itself much about the nature of the Jagat or the nature of Ishvara or whether the Jiva and Ishvara are one or any of that. That is not yoga's concern. Yoga's concern is just the mind and how do you conquer the mind. Chitta vritti nirodha. How do you accomplish that? So everyone needs that. Regardless of the system of philosophy, everyone needs to win over the mind. Everyone needs mental discipline. So no one conflicts with yoga and everyone in fact emphasizes that yoga must be followed. So Sankhya, yoga, and then of course because we are an Advaita Pitha, Vedanta also. So that is the Sāṅkhyatrayapratipādaka. One who puts forth the three Sankhyas, the Sankhya Siddhanta, Yoga and Vedanta. Vaidikamārgapravartaka, one who sets the Vaidikamārga in motion, or one who allows the Vaidikamārga to continue properly. Right? It is well known that the Acharyas of the Pitha are sticklers for Sampradaya. They do not let anything be changed even a little bit. Whatever Acharas there were in the time of Sureshwaracharya, more or less those same exact Acharas are going on as is today. So that Vaidikamārga, wherein the what do you call it? The Nikasha, the mark stone or the rubric for anything to be measured up against is Veda. That is why this is called vaidikamārgapravartaka. Anything that is done in the Pitha, anything that Acharya recommends for the sadhakas, anything that Acharya tells us to do or has done, will be based on something from the Vedas or derived from the Vedas. In fact, even the Namashankaraya japa that Acharya told us to do, I think over COVID, the first Shankara Jayanti that happened after COVID, the directive came from Sringeri that we should do japa of the mantra Namashankaraya, both as a mark of namaskara to the Guru Shankaracharya and as well as to namaskara to Shiva Shankara. This is not, a lot of people will have mantras that they'll come up with. No one knows where these mantras came from or who came up with them. But some mantras will just be given, they will go on Twitter and Facebook. But it is a mark of the steadfastness of Acharyas to Veda that even this mantra Acharya got from Veda. So in Rudra you have Namah Shankaraya cha, Mayaskaraya cha, Namah Shivaya cha, Shivataraya cha. So in that sequence that has the Panchakshari in the middle of Rudram, in the middle of Yajurveda, Acharya took out that mantra, that portion of that mantra that had both the Guru's name and Bhagavan's name and said, everyone, anyone, anywhere, anytime can do japa of this Namah Shankaraya. So Acharya could very well have said everyone do japa of Shankaracharya Namaha and no one would have said anything else. No one would have said any different. But yet Acharya, being the Vaidikamārgapravartaka, went back to Veda, found the instance of Shankara there and prescribed that for us all to do japa of Vaidikamārgapravartaka. Sarvatantrasvatantra. This is another term that we find very commonly. Tantra refers to a shastra. Swatantra means one who is unchecked, one who has freelance, one who has command over all the shastras. There is one shloka that is written in several texts refer it, but the writer says, Vayamiha padavidyam tantra manvikshikim va pathi yadi vipathe va sancharamas sapanthaha udayati dishi yasyam bhanuman saiva purva nahi taranurudete dikparadhina vrittihi. That poet says. He says whether it be pada, whether it be vyakarana, tantra, whether it be mimamsa or anvikshike, whether it be nyaya, whichever shastra it be, whatever I say, whatever path I go in, that is the correct path. So it is not the reverse wherein he says, I will look for the correct path and go in it. My knowledge, my learning is such that whichever path I go in, that will end up being the correct path. And the simile that he gives to that is, Udayati dishi yasyam bhanuman saiva purva. Whichever direction the sun rises in, that direction is east. Right? Nahi tarunaridete rikparadhinavritti. The sun does not check, he does not pull out his phone, use the compass app, check which side east comes in and then rise in that direction. Whichever direction the sun rises in, that is east. In the same way, whichever path I choose in Shastra, that will end up being correct. So this was actually in a Vakyartha, one Pandita cited this verse talking about Acharyas, and I thought it was very appropriate. Because in the Vakyartha Sadas we see, these Panditas come to speak on very specific topics. And the way it usually works is maximum a Pandita will have time in their life to study maximum 3 Shastras. They usually do not have time to attain mastery in more than that. There will be some few people like Darshana that will have 4 or 5 Shastras that they have mastered. But generally speaking, 1 or 2 Shastras is enough for someone to, that takes a person most of their educational career to get 1 or 2 Shastras. So these Panditas come to the Vakyartha Sadas having spent 30 years, 40 years on Nyaya, 40 years on Vyakarana, 40 years on Vedanta. And when their words stop, Acharya's words start. When they have a doubt that they cannot resolve, it is Acharya that resolves it. And everyone that comes is so struck as to how in the middle of such a busy day, a day that starts at 3:30 and ends at 1, a day that is filled with darshana for almost 2 hours in the morning, another hour in the evening, a day in which almost 4 hours goes in anusthana, in japa and sadhana and yoga, a day in which at least another half an hour will go in bhiksha, which will take place around 2 in the afternoon. Right? In the midst of all of this, if it is Vijayatra, forget it. There is some Kumbhabhishekam or some puja or some Pratisthapana in some place or the other every day. In the middle of all of this, how on earth did Acharya attain the mastery that it takes one man with nothing else to do for 40 years? How did Acharya get that in 10 years in the middle of such a busy day? This is a question that has remained unanswered for the last 100 years. Right? So, sarvatantrasvatantra. And the other thing is, we have already spoken about Acharyas knowing padavākyapramāṇas before. So those Shastras aside, even in things like Kavitva or Sangeeta or Kavya or Alankara Shastras, those Shastras also our Acharyas have a very great command upon, which is why their writings, their poetries, the songs that they write take root so well. It is because of their mastery in those subjects as well. Sarvatantrasvatantra. Then this next sequence is not, these Birudas do not come from Bhagavad Pada, but they come instead from Vidyaranya Swami, the 12th Acharya of the Pitha. So Adirajadhani, Vidyanagara Maharajadhani, Karnataka Pratishthapanācārya, all is one word. So it is well known that when the Mughals held sway over most of India, especially northern of the Deccan Plateau, at that point in time, Vidyaranya Swami called 2 Kshatriya boys, Harihara and Bukkarayas, and told them to start Haindava Samrajya, and for the protection of Hindus and Sanatana Dharma, to protect temples and learning and whatnot. And from there, the Vijayanagara Samrajya was started in the 1300s, and it lasted until the late 1600s. So for that 300-year span. But the impetus for this Samrajya came from Vidyaranya Swami. So all the products of that Samrajya, whether it be the Shilpas in Hampi, whether it be the literature and music that was engendered in several languages across that span in time. Those 200 years, so 1300 to the late 1500s, were more or less a golden era for all languages. Kannada poetry, Telugu poetry, Karnataka Sangeeta, all of these topics were pretty much solidified and attained a very nice stage over the course of Vijayanagara's tenure. In fact, even the terminology Karnataka Sangeeta that we have, right, as Hindustani and Karnataka Sangeeta, in North India it is Hindustani, in South India the system is Karnataka Sangeeta. It was called Karnataka Sangeeta because it was during the Vijayanagara Samrajya, in that court, in the Vijayanagara court, a meeting of various Sangeeta Vidwans was called from across South India, and it was formulated into a system, which is why it's called Karnataka Sangeeta as opposed to Dakshinati Sangeeta or something like that. Right? So all literature attained its golden era, and all arts attained their golden era during Vijayanagara, owing to Vijayanagara also. It is because that Samrajya was there that all of this happened. So Vidyaranya Swami was the cause of such a Samrajya being established, which is why Adirajadhani, the original capital of Vijayanagara, was Vidyanagara Maharajadhani. Because after the Battle of Tallikota, once the Vijayanagara forces there were defeated in the late 1600s, the capital changed. I think it changed to Penugunda in later times. And there were 2 or 3 capitals after it shifted from Hampi, but the empire did not really have much command over the land as it used to when the capital was in Vijayanagara. Which is why it is specified that the Adi Rajadhani, the first capital of this, was in Vidyanagara. So Vidyanagara was another name for Vijayanagara. It was actually built in the form of a Shri Chakra by Vidyaranya. So if you look at the Shri Chakra, you will have the Bhupura in the outside, right? The chakra that goes like that. So with those 4 gates in a circular way. So that Vidyanagara, that was the capital of the Vijayanagara Samrajya, one who caused the pratisthapana of the Karnataka Simhasana that has Vidyanagara as its Rajadhani. That is the way that samasa works. So Adi Rajadhani, Vidyanagara Maharajadhani, Karnataka Simhasana Pratishthapanācārya. One who is the Acharya that did the Pratisthapana of the Karnataka Simhasana, right, the Vijayanagara throne, that had Vidyanagara as its Adi Rajadhani. So it is a mark that Acharyas were concerned not only with their own study but also with societal situations and circumstances as well, that they took the impetus to put such plans in place in order to safeguard Sanatana Dharma. Vidyanagara Maharajadhani, Karnataka Simhasana Pratishthapanācārya, śrīmadrājādhirājaguru. And then owing to that, Harihara and Bukka gave Acharya the Gurusthana, and from then on it became customary that the Sringeri Acharyas became not just the Jagadgurus but the Rajagurus of the Vijayanagara Samrajya. Which is why a lot of people have a lot of questions as to why sannyasis are being given golden patras to do puja with for the matha, or why these sannyasis are being taken around in pallakis, or why these Birudavalis are being done, or why they wear jewels and robes during Navaratri. It is marks of that Rajagurutva. It is a mark that the Vijayanagara kings, Harihara and Bukka, offered to Vidyaranya as Guru Dakshina for the support and blessings that he gave in their venture. So after the throne was consolidated, they had Vidyaranya Swami sit on the throne and offered him their crown and offered him their robes in a token of gratitude. And that continued in Navaratri, where in the evening, Navaratri Darbar, Acharyas wait for that Darbar period. They will come, they will go into Sharadamba's sannidhi, put on the robes over their kashaya garment. So they will still keep the orange robes, but just put on the kingly robes over that. Put on the crown, come out, sit on the throne, listen to Chandi Parayana, listen to Chaturveda Seva, go back into Devi's sannidhi, take off the robes, and then go back as they came. So that is the general practice that we have. But it is a mark of that, Rajādhirājaguru. Then bhūmaṇḍalācārya, not just of the kings, but also to the bhūmaṇḍala. As we said earlier, it is their responsibility. If anyone, anywhere, in India, in the US, Australia, wherever it be, if anyone has any doubt regarding Sanatana Dharma, it is their responsibility to put that person in the proper path. So Rajādhirājaguru, bhūmaṇḍalācārya, ṛṣyaśṛṅgapuravarādhīśvara. They are the master of the city of Ṛṣyaśṛṅga. So it is well known that the term Sringeri comes from Sringagiri, right? So it is the place wherein ṛṣyaśṛṅga Maharshi did tapas. So the very same ṛṣyaśṛṅga Maharshi who was famed in the Ramayana for doing the Putrakameshti. So the Putrakameshti was an Angayaga of the Ashwamedha that Dasharatha had to do to get children, and it was said that ṛṣyaśṛṅga had to do that. He was also such a tapaśyali that kings used to invite him to their kingdoms if there was drought. So his tapas was such that whichever land he put his foot in immediately became subhiksha. So Prakriti, the environment itself, aligned itself to his presence in whichever kingdom he was in. So in fact he ends up marrying Shanta, the daughter of Romapada, for the very sake of quenching the drought in Romapada's kingdom. So such a great tapaśyali was ṛṣyaśṛṅga. And the fact that he did tapas there, and not just ṛṣyaśṛṅga, but his father, Vibhandaka Maharshi, also did tapas there. Both lingas are there. So the Malahanikareshwara linga also was worshipped by both father and son. So those lingas are all found in Sringeri, worshipped by Vibhandaka Maharshi and ṛṣyaśṛṅga Maharshi. So the way that we get kshetras is one of two ways. Either there is a Swayambhu Murti there, either Bhagavan chooses to become manifest in a particular spot, owing to which that place has some sort of sanctity or some sort of anukulata, some sort of conduciveness to austerity there, or it is a normal place wherein yogis, sannyasis, tapasvis do intense sadhana, and thereby by the mere fact that they chose that place to do their austerities, and by the fact that their austerities seeped into the surroundings, that place attains a sort of sanctity. So kshetras happen in one of these two ways. So in this case, both have happened, because the original devata in Sringeri was Malahanikareshwara. The most ancient devata that we have in that kshetra is Malahanikareshwara. And once Bhagavatpada came there, then he did pratisthapana of Sharadamba there, and then the kshetrapalakas, Durga, Kali, Bhairava and Anjaneya, all of those happened afterwards. But the first Devalaya in Sringeri was the Malahanikareshwara Devalaya. So there was already a Swayambhumurti there, and then on top of that, two illustrious rishis also added their tapas to that. So the quality of the place became such that by the time Bhagavatpada happened on this place in the Western Ghats, he saw, the legend goes that he saw a snake shielding a pregnant frog in the summer. So he saw that it is a place where even natural enmity does not exist. So there is a Yoga Sutra, ahimsa pratisthayam tat sannidho vairatyagaha. If someone truly practices ahimsa to the greatest degree possible, if someone truly wishes no harm upon anyone in thought, mind and deed, and if that pratishtha is there, so if he becomes fixed in that ideal for a long period of time, tat sannidho, in the presence of that person, in the vicinity of that person, vairatyagaha, not only for that person, but no being in his presence will have enmity. Right? So we'll see in kavyas there will be descriptions of lions and deer playing together, lions and elephants sleeping together. Right? There are all these descriptions that we have in kavyas when rishi ashramas come. So that is the principle that this is working on, and that is the same principle that Bhagavatpada recognized. If a snake can set aside its natural enmity or the predator-prey relationship it shares with a frog, then there must have been some great yogi here that did tapas for such an extended period of time that even such a natural enmity was overcome. So Bhagavatpada, seeing that, chose Sringeri as the place for his fourth pitha, or for the main pitha. And then Devi had already been bound by the Vanadurga mantra before. So at the end of the debate with Mandana Mishra, Ubhaya Bharati Devi would have finished her avatara and gone back to her Yadartha Swarupa as Sharada. But Bhagavatpada did akarshana of her with the Vanadurga mantra and extracted a promise from her to stay in Sringeri. So the shloka goes, Ya Sharadambethyabhidham vahanti, Kratam pratiknyam paripalayanti, Adyapi Shringadripure vasanti pradyotate, Abhishtavaran dishanti. So that Sharadamba, that Devi that bears the name Sharada in Sringeri. Sharadambeti abhidham vahanti. So obviously she has many names. Very close by in Kullur she is Mukambika, in Hornadu she is Annapurna. That very same Devi has the name Sharada in Sringeri. Kritam pratiknyam paripalayanti. She is carrying out the promise that she made to Bhagavatpada. What is that promise? Adyapi Shringadripure vasanti. Adyapi. To this day, she is very much present in Sringeri. Pradyodate abhishtavaran dishanti. Giving the desired boons to those that worship her. So that Sharada then being added to the kshetra gave it even more sanctity. And Sringeri is also the place where Bhagavatpada spent most of his life. So by the age of 16, he had finished writing the bhashyas in Badari and he had come to Kashi by the age of 16. So after that, after one Vijaya Yatra that Acharya had done around India, Sringeri was the place where he settled down for the longest period of time. It is in Sringeri that Giri became Totakacharya, right? So the famous story that we have wherein there was a dull student who became a very learned student simply by the will of Bhagavatpada. That happened here. The case of Hasta Malaka's parents coming to Bhagavatpada and saying, we have a child, he does not speak, he does not move, we don't know what happened to him. Bhagavatpada saying he was a yogi in his Purva Janma, so he is not meant to be with you, give him to me instead. This happened in an Agrahara very close to Sringeri, in the vicinity of Sringeri. So all of these momentous occasions in Sringeri also happened in Bhagavatpada's stay in Sringeri. And from Sringeri, Bhagavatpada then is thought of by his mother Aryamba and then goes to Kalati from there. Right? So it is that portion of Bhagavatpada's stay in Sringeri that a lot happened. Bhagavatpada asking Sureshwaracharya to write the Vātikas for his bhashya, that not happening. Sureshwaracharya writing Naishkarmi Siddhi. So all of these things happened during Bhagavatpada's stay in Sringeri. So it was Bhagavatpada's favorite place over the course of his life as well. It is that Sringeri that our Acharyas preside over. And it is also a very nice relationship that Acharyas have with the residents of that town. If you see in any Utsava or in any Parvadina that happens, the way that the people of the city come to pay their respects to Acharya, or the second that Chaturmasya comes, the way that the people of the city come to offer, grains and granaries and vegetables to Acharya, it is a very heartwarming, touching relationship that the residents of the city and the Acharyas share. So, ṛṣyaśṛṅgapuravarādhīśvara, tuṅgabhadrātīravāsi. The other beautiful facet is this Sringeri is right next to a tirtha also. Right? So it is a kshetra if it is a place, it is a tirtha if there is a body of water. That is also appear. So Tuṅgabhadra is an old tirtha that is found in our Puranas. It is said that it originates from the tusks of Varaha Swami. So after Adivaraha put the earth back where it was supposed to be, his sweat flowed from his tusks and became this Tunga and Bhadra. There are two different rivers that merge at Sangameshwara to become Tuṅgabhadra, to become one river. This story has a lot of, philosophical concepts underneath it, because Varaha is not just Varaha, he is Yajñavaraha. So his body is meant to be the summation of karma. So the fact that his sweat coming from there and all that is a very philosophically nice discussion, but this is not the time for that. But that being said, Tuṅgabhadra is a very divine river. And tuṅgabhadrātīravāsi. Someone once asked the question the other day, only Tunga flows where Acharya stays. So how is it that they are tuṅgabhadrātīravāsi? They are only Tunga-tīravāsi. So actually in Puranas, it is another philosophical point that Tuṅgabhadra is made up of Hari and Hara. Right? So Isha Shrishatmikam Vande Tuṅgabhadra Maghapaham. So Tunga is Hari, Bhadra is Hara. And Tunga Narayano Nama, Bhadra Devo Maheshwaraha. Tayor bhedam yah kurute, it is said. So just as you are not supposed to do bheda between Hari and Hara, you are not supposed to see bheda between Tunga and Bhadra, which embody Hari and Hara. So whether one was meant to teach the other, whether the other was meant to teach this, that is up to interpretation. But I think it is a very nice way for us to remind ourselves that Hari and Hara are not different. If we look upon Tunga and Bhadra as the same, Tunga and Bhadra as the same flow of water, that serves the same purpose. So tuṅgabhadrātīravāsi. Then śrīmadvidyāśaṅkarapādapadmārādhaka. This is the last biruda that we have. So those acharyas that worship the feet of Vidyāśaṅkara. So this is the iconic temple of Sringeri, the tall stone temple that we have. That is the Vidyāśaṅkara Mandira. So Vidyāśaṅkara, Vidyatirtha was the name of the Acharya. He was the 10th Acharya of the Pitha. He was the guru of both the 11th and 12th Acharyas. Both Bharati Tirtha Swami and Vidyaranya Swami were both students of this Acharya. Bharati Tirtha Swami was the elder brother of Vidyaranya Swami in his Purvashrama. So the elder brother got sannyasa first and then the younger brother got sannyasa after that. So that is the sequence. But he has the unique pedigree of being probably the only Acharya who was the direct guru of two Acharyas that succeeded. So he was a great yogi and he was doing this particular Acharya called Lambika Yoga. So Lambika Yoga is a state wherein it became very famous with Raghavendra Swami in the later times. But in the 12th century, in the earlier centuries, in the 1400s and 1500s, this Acharya performed the Jiva Samadhi, wherein he sat in a room, went into Samadhi and instructed that a room be built around him and sealed. And they did that. But when Vidyaranya Swami and Bharatirtha Swami were both off on Vijaya Yatra, people were wondering because, you have sealed a man into stone and no food or water has been going in. On top of that, it is airtight, more or less. So is the person inside still there or is he not there? But instructions came that the structure not be opened. So they waited until the Acharyas were off on Vijaya Yatra and then opened the tomb and they saw emptiness inside. So it was understood there that the Acharya had attained not just Videha Mukti, but he had completely merged into the Ishvara that his Atma was engrossed in. And on top of that, then the Mandira was built, a Shivalinga was put there, as is the case. So in all of the Adhishthanas of our Acharyas, the way it works is the Parthiva Sharira. The mortal body is placed under, sealed over. So for sannyasis, the body is not set into fire. Right? So for the general layman, the body is set into fire some Jaina people will leave the body on top of a mountain to dissolve into water for when it rains. That is a practice in Jaina communities. But for us, we leave the body to fire to become ash where it came from. But for sannyasis, their body is so pure that fire should not touch it, which is why their body does not go into fire. The other thing is, properly speaking, the chiti that the body goes into should be kindled from the agnihotra that the person kept. So when the grahastha passes away, his agnihotra is used to kindle that fire for the body to burn. Sannyasi, having given up that, does not have a fire. Therefore, the body is not put into fire for that reason also, and instead is put in the ground to mix back into the earth from where it came. And on top of that, they will do pratishtha of a Shivalinga. Puja is done to the Shivalinga. And then in Sringeri, as we see, the vigrahas that we have of the acharyas behind, those vigrahas are put there for us to do dhyana of the acharya and for alankara. But puja is done to the Shivalinga that is placed on the above the Parthiva Sharira's remains. So the same thing was done for Vidyāśaṅkara's case. The Vidyāśaṅkara linga was placed on that. That is why it's Vidyāśaṅkara, not Vidyatirtha. And on one side Vidya Ganapati, on the other side Kere Durga. Both of those devatas were placed, and Aradhana has been done. There are several architectural wonders in that temple too. If you go in, you will see 12 lions, and it is said that whichever Rashi the sun is in, sunlight will fall on the lion corresponding to that Rashi. So it's a very nice temple. Around the walls, there are several shilpas that are there that are also very efficacious. There is a shilpa of Kartavirya. It is a belief that if anyone loses anything, praying to Kartavirya there will allow that person to obtain whatever they have lost. There are the Dashavatas etched on the side of that. There is a Devi that is etched there. In the same way, there is a Yoga Narasimha that is on the, if we are facing Ishvara, on the left side, on the left wall of the temple, there is a Yoga Narasimha there, for whom special puja is offered on Narasimha Jayanti. So puja is done in Narasimhavana, in the Agrahara, in the Vidyaranya Agrahara to the Narasimha there, and also to the Narasimha on the wall of this temple. Right? So the Alaya itself has many beautiful facets around it. So that is a Vidyaranya, Vidyāśaṅkara that is enshrined there, vyākhyānasiṃhāsanādhīśvara. And then from there, as I said, the guru of the current Pīഠādhipati is thought of. So you have Abhinavavidyatirtha Mahaswami Karakamala Sanjata, the Acharya who has come from Abhinavavidyatirtha Swami Shri Bharati Tirtha Mahaswaminam, the Charanaravindayoho. We offer namaskaras to the lotus feet of Bharati Tirtha Mahaswami. And also, because there is also an Uttaradhikari, Tat Karakamala Sanjata Sringeri Jagadguru Shri Vidhushekhara Bharati Mahaswaminancha. And also to the lotus feet of his Uttaradhikari, Vidhushekhara Bharati Mahaswami, Charanaravindayoha Sāṣṭāṅga Pranāmān Samarpayāmaha. We offer namaskaras to those two acharyas who are qualified by all the illustrious qualities that we have talked about through this Birudavali. So it is a very nice Birudavali that is there. The language also is very nice Samskrita Bhasha. And it is a quick and short way of us to remember what kind of a parampara is that we are fortunate enough to have landed up in. Because for most of us at least, when we are introduced to Sringeri, we don't really know where we have ended up or how we have ended up here. At least. Speaking from personal experience, when I was growing up, Sringeri was just a name I heard. There are sannyasis there are many sannyasis. You don't understand how illustrious this particular pitha is, how lucky we are to be able to see people from a parampara that goes straight back to Bhagavad Pada. Right? We hear of legends, but we hear of people in legends and tales, but to see people descended from that legend is something that I don't think we may properly appreciate unless we know what it is that we have sitting in front of us. Right? So for many people, Acharya is a Kulaguru, is their Kulaguru. There are people who are fortunate enough to have Acharya as a Kulaguru the way that we have some Purohitas. So for them also, it is a great fortune to know that whatever family matters you are consulting on, you are asking the highest power in the land. It is like having the ability to call the Supreme Court whenever you have any legal question. Right? So it is a very great opportunity that has been placed in our hands to find ourselves in a temple that has been directed by Acharya, to have the ability to go to Sringeri and do the Pada Puja of Acharyas. Another beautiful thing is, in Sringeri also, the Pada Puja that happens, as we said, right, the first name that we tell is of the current Acharya's Guru. And then from there, we say that we do namaskara to the next two acharyas. In Sringeri also, when we go, while darshana is happening, pada puja will be happening on the side. Pada puja will happen to the guru and paramaguru of the acharya there. It will not be, so right now when we go, it will not be Bharatirtha Mahaswami's padukas that receive our puja. It will be either be Abhinavavidyatirtha Mahaswami's padukas or Chandrasekhara Bharati Mahaswami's padukas. And even there, the Ashtottara Shatanama that we do puja with, that also is written by the Uttaradhikari. So whatever Ashtottara Shatanama that we have right now for Abhinavavidyatirtha Mahaswami's padukas, that was written by Bharatirtha Mahaswami. The reason being that, we are saying that we need to have bhakti towards this Guru Parampara. But there it is, the acharyas, when they come out for darshana, they do not want to be just blessing the people. They want to listen to their guru's praise being chanted. They want to think of their guru whenever they come out of whatever sadhana they're doing inside. So even that 1.5 hour from 11 to 12:30 that acharya spends away from acharya's books, away from acharya's japa, away from acharya's sadhana, whatever time acharya has, acharya is making sure that even then the guru is not far from his thoughts. So if that is the level of respect that acharya is paying, then, it falls on us what kind of respect we should be paying to our acharyas. So one small token of gratitude, one small token of respect that we can offer those acharyas is doing Guru Vandana either before or after any important event it is that we do, whether it be in a temple or at home. So hopefully this sheds some light on what it is that we are saying, on the meanings of what we are saying. And at the very least, it was a wonderful opportunity for all of us and for me to spend some time thinking of my gurus. Right? There is no better time than thinking of either Bhagavan or of a guru. So I have had the opportunity to speak of my gurus for 1.5 hours. You have all had the opportunity to listen to the Guru Mahima for 1.5 hours. So, or however long it is, I don't know how much time it took. But thanking the organizers for the opportunity and offering Anantakoti Sashtanga Namaskaras to the Padapadmas of Sringeri Jagadgurus, I will stop this here. Ityesha Vangmayi Puja śrīmadrājādhirājaguru tena devesha priyatam me sadashivah tava tattvarna janami kidrishosi maheshwara yadrishosi mahadeva tadrishaya namo namaha mangalam stambhadimbhaya mangalam mrityamrityave mangalam raudrarupaya narasimhaya mangalam.